Happy New Year! We are back. It's 2025 and it's the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name's Rory. I'm joined by my very good friend Adam, and he's decided to stay on for a bit of overtime. Andrea is joining us for the Premier League shift. Mate, how are you doing? Good to have you on the English side of the pod.
Good. We're going to have to talk about those details of overtime, definitely.
Yeah. Off mic. Moving on. Adam, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, good, thank you. I had a good break, it's fair to say. I do feel a bit like George Michael's Last Christmas anthem at the moment, though, because Wycombe Wanderers are having their team pulled apart as inevitably for a small club, all the big players get recalled from their loans. Then suddenly someone's interested in your centre-back that's only got 6 months left on his contract, so inevitably we're scrambling around. So I feel a bit like that line that says, I gave you my heart, but the very next day you gave it away. So, yeah, unfortunately, I'm having to adjust to those feelings. But I'm glad that we've managed to get ourselves a centre-back, so I'm a bit more calm about the situation, Rory. How about your kind of break? How was that?
Yeah, well, so football-wise, the Alex have done very well, so delighted about that. The turmoil of the lower league fan and the fear of your loan players being recalled is absolutely horrendous. Our manager has been asked in every press conference, like, are they staying? Are they staying? Like, yeah, no, as far as I'm aware, they're staying. Like, nobody said otherwise. Bolton, Max Conway is terrible. You do not want him back. He's absolutely crap. Do not look at him again. But yeah, overall, crew very good. Arsenal, the bane of my existence, but we're going to get onto that. I'm sure it's just not even Arsenal, it's the referees that are the bane of my existence, but we'll get onto it. We're going to look at a few headlines that kind of happened while we were away. And let's start with the big one, I suppose. Russell Martin gone at Southampton. Now, we're mainly talking about this so we can talk about the fantastic video this week of the very intelligent woman who managed to predict a 5-0 loss for her beloved Saints and then danced as she collected a shirt from what looked like a very, very disappointed Armstrong. I can't imagine what he was thinking in his head as she pranced up towards him and the rest of the crowd booed. But an unbelievable video. I'm sure you've seen it, but Adam, it kind of sums up what's happening at Southampton at the moment. We're going to talk about them a little bit in the second part of the show, but Russell Martin gone. It was a matter of time. Even Juric, what the hell has he let himself in for?
Yeah, there's a few car crashes that have happened at Southampton, it's fair to say. But that particular decision to get rid of Russell Martin has probably highlighted what the actual issues were at Southampton personally. I think despite the fact, and we'll allude to it, even Juric being brought in, which again wasn't on my bingo card for 2024 to happen, I'm a bit miffed by the whole strategy here because you've got a man in Russell Martin that was trying to develop a particular style of football, but I think he was let down by the recruitment that they did in the summer. And I thought, given the way they'd gone about it, they didn't sack him during the international windows. I thought, right, they're going to give him until January to bring in those kind of players. But as it played out, obviously, those kind of consecutive defeats and the manner of those defeats, I think, took its toll on the whole team as well as the support base. And they had enough. They couldn't see a vision for the future. But now, since Juric has been brought in, it hasn't looked any rosier. I think, if anything, it probably has made maybe Juric question whether he wants to stay at this project, because I think this is a huge mess and it's not going to be recertified even after this season, Roy. I think it's going to take a while for this team to build themselves back to the quality that they see themselves. So, yeah, a lot of question marks in terms of that whole strategy. And yeah, I think we're going to speculate whether this is going to be the worst Premier League side in a Premier League season.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I think they could be. We're going to talk about that in the second half of the pod. I think, look, they had to sack Russell Martin. We talked about him on the levels of, like, he's further down the scale than Vincent Kompany in terms of, like, pig-headedness of sticking to a philosophy, even though it's clearly not working. So it definitely had to be, he had to go. But Andrea, like, as Adam was alluding to, even Juric, is this just a payday for him? He sees it as, look, I'm not going to keep him up. They'll sack me eventually. They'll have to pay my contract out and I can go on holiday. Or do you think this is him, like, looking at the fact that maybe in the Championship, he can manage in the Championship, he can get them back up, he can build something like... This is the quite a big appointment for the position they're in, right? This is about as good a manager as they could have got.
Yeah, I think it's a big risk. I think for Juric's sake, it's one of those ones where he gets to experience a new league, and he's also got a chance where he's expected to go down, so it's almost a free hit for him. But I'm a bit surprised Southampton's choice, because you'd think they would have gone for someone with at least a bit more experience in Premier League football, even if it wasn't someone with a big name, let's say. But it's such a big risk because it's such a big, not even tactically, but culture-wise with what Juric brings. We know what he brings in Serie A, so what he brought in Serie A. So I'm just a bit worried that I don't know if his approach is the best for this type of situation. And it's such a big situation they're in. Relegation is it can really ruin teams. So it's a big risk, and I just don't know whether the players they have currently, they have the personnel that matches the depth of what he wants in the team anyway. Because I think the way they play, they haven't got enough depth in those positions as it is anyway, especially playing like three centre backs as well. So they don't really have depth in that. I think the number 9 is obviously another question mark as well. So there's a few question marks. If he can get back in January, maybe we might see some change, but it just doesn't seem likely. And yeah, I think we've all alluded to it. It's going to be something we're going to talk about, how bad it can be for the rest of the season.
Well, best of luck, Ivan. Genuinely, best of luck. And I think there might be a few fist fights on that training ground before the season's out. But we'll keep you on top of it, listener, if there is. But talking of relegation battles, something that my favourite emotion is Schadenfreude. I love laughing at people and their misery. And one thing I really enjoyed was Ruben Amorim's comments pre-Liverpool game that Manchester United could very much be in a relegation battle. Now, just Manchester United and relegation battle in the same sentence is enough to kind of cheer me up for a good couple of weeks. But Adam, obviously they're not really in a relegation battle, right? No. They're not really going to get relegated as much as I might will it to happen. This was just a massive statement to the players, right? For you to just don't think that this is like you're comfortable. This was a wake-up call, right?
Yeah, I think he's probably gone in to a place that he thought he could turn around quite quickly in terms of the culture, but actually he's starting to realise that there's some deep-rooted issues at this club, shown by the kind of performances up until the Liverpool results. And I think he just wanted to shock them. I think he just, I think it was quite refreshing from a Man United fan perspective as well, that you had that kind of honesty. I think people like Ten Hag would have papered over it and said, "What are you talking about?" And I think it was actually quite nice for someone to be realistic about the situation that they found themselves. I think, like you say, I don't think it was realistic, but I think it was needed to be said. I think it needed to be voiced, and people laughed, I think, at the point, but I think it genuinely was maybe a forefront kind of piece from Amorim to kind of maybe, look, everything that I'm trying to do with this group of players isn't working, so maybe a kind of form of shock tactics will work. But a lot of credit to Amorim for the way he's gone about it. I think, obviously, a lot will be alluded to in the Liverpool piece, but I think this was his first proper week with the players as well. He hasn't had a persistent kind of run where he's been able to spend more than a couple of days with these players. So this is probably a turning point, but the thing that I would say is not quite the turning point because they have to follow it up. And that's the thing for me. So let's see what happens. We'll talk a bit more in detail, but certainly from a point of view, Amorim needed to voice it, and I think he was quite sensible.
And Andrea, I'm going to give you the question. Does this then mean that with Tottenham only 1 point ahead of United, they are also in a relegation battle? Is this what we can take from this situation?
100%. Double relegation all day, definitely.
Here we go.
I'll take it.
Southampton, Man United and Spurs. Pile on now, guys. Pile on. We are not responsible for any losses you make on that bet. But, guys, those are all the headlines. So, before we go to this weekend, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at all the big results this weekend and take you through all the action. We will see you on the other side. And we are back, and it's time to start with, of course, it looked like it might be snowed off. The United fans were praying it would be. The Liverpool fans were praying it wouldn't, but it did end Liverpool 2, Manchester United 2. And Andrea, overall, I think Manchester United were the better side here, right?
I thought they played really well. I think they were just edged it over Liverpool, to be fair, in terms of the way they controlled it. I thought they were clever on the ball, which we haven't seen in recent games. I thought like Bruno Fernandes really took leadership in that midfield, spraying the passes, but also bringing players into play as well. I think we saw players step up. Martinez chipped in with a goal, but also looked really solid at the back, which has been. He's had moments where he has been, but most of the time has been questioned. Diallo again, another superb performance. He looks like a special player, and he needs more game time, obviously, and more opportunities, and we'll see more from him as well. But I think there was a great ethic between the players, a great actual connection. And, they actually wanted to play and they wanted to win, and I think that's what's been lacking. For any fan, it's the basic thing you want from your players. You want them to give everything. You want them to have if they play well and they lose, you have your heads held high. And I think even if they did lose that game, I still think they would have had their heads held high because I really think they did perform well. And they could have won it at the end. Maguire, don't know why Zerski passed it. He should have shot. He should have known Maguire was there. He should not have passed. But yeah, that was a massive chance. But I really like the approach from defence to the attack as well. Even like Rasmus Højlund as well. There was little signs of Højlund from Atalanta, taking on his defender, running at them, putting pressure on the defence. Made some good runs on the ball, some good crosses on another day. If someone ran in, maybe could have caused some trouble as well. But overall, I thought they were. It looked like they were Liverpool for that game, and it was vice versa. I thought Liverpool looked a bit. I think they were a bit stunned with the whole approach. I think a lot of talking point was that Man United were going to lose 6 or 7. It's going to be one of those games, and the fact that they kind of shocked them, being like, what, we're here to play as well. We've got the quality, and it kind of silenced Liverpool, especially going into that half time with the scoreline it was as well. So, yeah, a lot of credit for Man United, and yeah, they performed really well.
Yeah, I thought it was generally a fantastic performance from United. I think the first half, the only thing that was really missing was just that final pass, that final killer ball, that ball, just that final one to set up the goal. Because I feel like United kept carving them open, and that Liverpool high line was getting caught out consistently, but just the pass wasn't quite making it there. But the whole structure, and I think Amorim has done a really good job in these big games, right? So obviously they beat Man City. Against Arsenal, I think they played very well. It was 2 corners, of course, that meant we won the game, right? But overall, it was a fairly even game. And again, in this massive game when, as you said, everyone expected them to turn up and just get absolutely battered, he seems to be able to prepare them for big games. So I think this is a very good thing for Manchester United. Obviously, the thing now is they've struggled in the games where there's the pressure on them to go and attack, right? When the pressure is on them to go and take the initiative, that's when they've kind of stumbled and that's when they've lost these games at home. But Adam, I want to talk to you about, I really liked the midfield of Mainu and Ugarte. I thought both of them looked really tidy. Ugarte able to win the ball. Even the pass for the Maguire miss at the end is definitely kind of accidental, but it's a hell of a ball that completely cuts the midfield open. And I think it kind of sums up his performance altogether. And it makes me wonder, in the last game against Newcastle, he picked Casemiro and Eriksen in midfield. I feel like the midfield now has to be Ugarte and Mainu when fit, right? I think there's a little bit of promise there in these two kind of youngish. I'm not sure Ugarte is quite as young as Mainu, but these young midfielders, right?
Yeah, 100%. I was definitely going to highlight Ugarte's performance because I thought he was pinnacle to how Man United dictated that kind of midfield battles. I think his contribution on the day really helped kind of set the tone alongside Keibu Mainu, who I thought was imperious in terms of his attacking application anyway. I think if he had a bit more of a clinical edge to his game a bit more, then potentially you're seeing a goal from him as well. It was interesting how I suppose Man United went about the business as well. They definitely targeted Trent Alexander-Arnold down that right-hand side flank. 54%, I was just looking up, of their attacks came down that side compared to 26% on that right-hand side or left-hand side in comparison. So it goes to show they had a clear game plan. But I think what was also really telling was Amorim and the players talking about mentality. The application was there across the board. And even though I will probably highlight the performance of De Ligt, which was probably a weak point for Man United, I thought it was one of his better games in comparison to what he's had of late. But across the board, I thought it was a really good performance from Man United. And it's typical when you kind of write off Man United, that is when they actually seem to perform better. It feels like when they're least expected to win a result or win a game, they sort of pull it out the bag. And this typified what Man United have been known for, is when everything's against them, they just grind out those kind of results. And this kind of evokes that kind of Man United of old, really, in that respect. I think the key is, as I alluded to earlier, it's all about that consistency now. Is how do you follow that up? How do you make sure you've set that standard of tone now with this particular game? You know, there was a lot of question marks about certain players in this particular game as well. How can they make sure that they apply that to the next game and so on? So I think that's the key. You know, Rasmus Højlund's, he's not been in great form. I think it's fair to say, I think he should have a lot more critics than Xerxes. And even for that opportunity that he set up Maguire, I think he's petrified of taking a shot. I think given the last game where he was booed off, I think if he takes a shot and he misses, he'll get handed down again. Yeah. So I think that's the reason why he passed it to Maguire. And I feel for him, because even the pass wasn't, flush. So it wasn't easy because of the conditions as well. I think that doesn't really get kind of recorded in the whole incident. But overall, great application for Man United. But I suppose whilst we are saying that Liverpool had a bad day, they still managed to get a draw. They didn't lose the game.
Yeah, and this is it. And it did look, for all the world, like they were going to win the game, right? The second they went 2-1 ahead, I was like, okay, well, there's no way Liverpool throw this away. I just want to, before we talk about Liverpool, I just also want to quickly say the back three, I really like Maguire in a back three. Yeah. I really want people to kind of look and just give him a bit of credit at the moment, because I feel like he really did incredibly well. And I've said for a long time, like even when he came from Leicester, I was like, if you just ask him to head it away and not be your main ball-playing defender, he will be fantastic. And he was just, I thought he was really, really good again. And I know United have had some shocking performances, but I feel like he's one of the players that's really thrived from Amorim arriving. Dalot as well on his day, just against Trent, which we will get to in roughly 30 seconds. Again, when Dalot on his day just absolutely butchers people, I think he's been a real, he's really thrived in this system. And of course, Ahmad, as we said, I was screaming at the telly with that header in the first half when he somehow headed it backwards. I'm still not quite sure how he did it, but he was finding himself in the positions and was a constant problem. But let's talk about Liverpool, I suppose. They did get the 2 goals, a beautiful goal from Gakpo, just the way he beats the defender to cut inside and pings it far corner, an unbelievable finish. And then Salah with the penalty, the most obvious penalty in the world. I'm not sure what De Ligt is doing with his hand up there, waving to his parents in the crowd. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure why his hand was up there. But for Liverpool, let's talk about the positives, negatives. I don't know. This feels still, and maybe I'm biased because I'm wearing an Arsenal shirt, it feels like all round quite a negative day for Liverpool. I feel like the atmosphere was quite negative, the result was negative, and the atmosphere post the result was very negative. I think it was only the fact that Manchester United haven't been as good as they could be in the last couple of weeks, that they don't go on and win this game, that they don't really, when they get one, they didn't really push for a second. There wasn't really that level of confidence. I think a better team against Liverpool with that performance, they beat Liverpool. I think they were kind of still fortunate with Manchester United. But of course, all of the kind of ire has been against Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think the defending for the first goal is genuinely unforgivable. I can't believe how completely half-arsed he is. I've done that kind of defending in Calcetto when I've been playing for 20 minutes and I just want the game to end. I'm like, oh God, we've still got 10 minutes left. I'll make it look like I'm doing something. Adam, it really, you could kind of generously say he was showing him on the inside and passing him on to his marker, but it was just lazy, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know, and I hate to use this as an excuse, but whether he was genuinely just tired. But there is some responsibility that he should be picking up his man. Ultimately, if you concede, and I'm sure we'll allude to this with James Justin as well, from a Leicester City perspective, he did something similar this weekend, where just half-arsed with the approach. And unfortunately, you just can't do that. Even when it came to the passing aspect of it, just get it down the line. Get it to a point where it's just away from a potential where Man United can penetrate you or cause you harm, and I think that's the problem. But I also wonder if Arne Slot really read the kind of tactics well for this particular game. I think if you're seeing Dalot taking advantage of that, maybe go about shoring up that side very quickly. And I don't know if he reacted very well in the circumstances. So I think that was definitely a learning curve on his side of things. But there was a number of performances across the pitch that I would have also said weren't great personally. And I think there was just individual errors that I think maybe, woke up Liverpool in that respect to maybe they took their foot off the gas that they have been applying in recent weeks. Maybe they got away with it in certain games as well this season. Brighton springs to mind as well, where, if you push them, then they can be exploited. I think also what was really highlighted, was the pace. If you attack them with pace, Liverpool do seem to struggle. In particular, Van Dijk, he can't seem to really cope with that if there's people running at him. So I think that's another thing that I would say there's a potential weakness in that armoury for Liverpool, and they maybe need to review that situation. But a lot will be alluded to, Rory, about the whole Trent contracts aspect. And I think, I don't know if you read into it, but I still think he's a professional at the end of the day. I don't think he kind of reads into this whole contract scenario. And I think it's really weird that you're getting fans in the stands like really hounding him down on that basis that, he doesn't care for the shirt. Well, I'm sure they didn't say that about a year ago when he was delivering those kind of performances. So again, it's a really weird situation, but where do you see Trent at the moment?
Look, I don't think any professional goes out there and says, I'm not going to try today. I don't think that's how it happens. I just think there's a cycle, there's just that 1% drop off, that 2% drop off, whatever it is. I find it interesting that in the crowd, I think before there was one point where Liverpool won a corner in the first half and he went down to the Kop, or maybe it was the second half because they were attacking the Kop. It was the first half, right? But he went down to pick up the ball to go for the corner, and a fan visibly ran down and shouted at Trent. And I was like, oh, he's already kind of getting pelters here. They're already kind of turning on him a bit. And I think maybe there's a little bit of I don't know, this is going to get me in trouble, but here we go. I know a lot of Liverpool fans that like to hold the moral high ground about how their fans conduct themselves when I don't think that's actually 1,000% correct. And I think a lot of their fans turn on their players very, very quickly, as fans do in every club. So I think actually Liverpool are no different. And I think what could happen as this season goes on and this situation gets messier and messier, because I do think he's going to go to Real Madrid on a free. I think that's what's going to happen. I think you could see the atmosphere towards him in the game change, and it could get to a point. It could, I'm not saying it will, where maybe on a slot it's not possible for him to play him, where he has to turn around and say, right, Conor Bradley becomes our starting right back, because it's just not a good thing to be starting Trent in these games, at which point you're taking out one of your best players because the fans have already turned on him for a move that potentially could happen or is going to happen. I think it has a real potential to turn quite poisonous. I think it's quite interesting that Van Dijk and Salah aren't getting the same level of stick. Now, obviously, it's because Trent is from Liverpool, he's, Liverpool lad, etc. But I think if you're annoyed at him not signing a contract, your board haven't offered him a contract up until this point. They've not offered him a contract to Van Dijk or to Salah. They've let your three... If you wandered in to the desert in Morocco and said to someone, name me 3 Liverpool players, they would say Salah, Van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? That club have not offered them contracts and have allowed it to run down to this situation. I think that's horrendous management, and I think they've put Klopp in a really bad position. Now, obviously, they're not Slot, sorry, but they're still top of the league. They're still massive favourites. Without my Arsenal hat on, I still think they're going to win the league, right? But there's a problem here that Slot needs to deal with that could have been easily avoided. Either you turn around to the players and they're able, you sell them with a year. If you know you're not going to offer them a new contract, you sell them, you get them gone. Or you offer them the contracts, you tie it up quickly, you get them announced this week, next week, so that there's that rise towards the end of the season. I just think they're giving Slot an issue here that he doesn't or he shouldn't have to deal with. And I think the Trent one could get really quite poisonous, because we saw we all know why Steven Gerrard didn't leave twice, because people knocked on his door and told him he couldn't leave, right? Like, we know what the atmosphere can be like in Liverpool. So I think this Trent thing could get equally as bad. So it'll be an interesting kind of theme running through their season. But I honestly I felt quite bad for him, to be honest. I know, like, because this isn't the first performance like this from him. He has these performances where he just gets exposed. He has a bad day and everyone pretends he's the worst defender in the world. So I think it's just the fact that it's this performance at this time that means it's magnified a little bit more. But Andrea, Liverpool, they've been getting a lot of comebacks. They go behind a goal before they seem to wake up. Like, they got a draw, but have United kind of sent a message now to teams that you can go at them, you can get them, and you can get something from them? Because I think sometimes narratives form around teams, and teams just go, right, let's just try and get out with a 3-0 loss. If you know what I mean. Do you think this could kind of show a lot of teams the blueprint?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with both of you in terms about the pace of teams. When they play with pace, they really do look vulnerable. It just seems a bit unstable. Like, you noticed as well when the goals conceded, it seems a bit the communication, kind of connection between like Van Dijk and Robertson seems to be a bit off as well. I think there's a lot of question marks in the midfield as well. I don't think they have enough cover. Like, I thought when they went 2-1 up, I was surprised they didn't bring on someone like Endo on to kind of like reassure that midfield that they were getting dominated on, and maybe kind of close the game out with him. So I think, yeah, they seem to be a team that they feel like obviously on the high with confidence, but obviously when you're at that point, that's when you can be just as vulnerable as well. And I think that's what they're kind of reaching at the moment, because I think they've been so good compared to any other team in the Premier League. I feel like we all said, when they went 2-1 up, you thought they were just going to go and win it. And I think if we thought it, I'm presuming the players and they thought it as well. And I think that's kind of got into their heads. And I think when you start to see points drop because of that, we saw it against Fulham, we saw it against there, and Leicester was very lucky it was, to be fair, that Leicester game. So yeah, it's a lot of concern. And I think that midfield, Gravenberg is a pivotal player in that midfield, but I feel like McAllister and Curtis Jones at times, to be fair, he has, but I still don't think they've stood up as much as Gravenberg, and I think there's a bit of question marks in that midfield as well. Maybe Trent goes there, who knows? They move him midfield, give him some game time there, who knows? But I think there are some question marks, and like you said, I feel like Robertson as well, Van Dijk, there's that issue there. I feel like they can exploit the fullback and the centre back, create space, and the pacing behind as well. And I think they also seem quite fatigued because these guys are playing every game. And I think that's always been the Liverpool's case. They've always stuck with the same 11. And you get to the point where games come thick and fast, and that fatigue's going to hit. And I get that sense from them as well, that can play a factor as well. But certainly for my thinking is that they don't look like that Man City of last season where they were just going to steamroll it and win 15 out of 15. They don't seem like they're going to do that. So they're going to have to ride it out luck a bit. And this is why Arsenal should, even if they've dropped points, they should still be sniffing around, because they really could push them. So yeah, I think it does give a lot of confidence. I think it gives a lot of confidence to Arsenal as well, in terms of that kind of search of, like, they can be at with teams. Even an easy game like Leicester, they almost fumbled it. So there are question marks.
Yeah, overall, I've come out of this weekend feeling positive. I'm not towards Anthony Taylor, but overall quite positive in terms of where we are this weekend. I think, yeah, I've been looking a lot at our last 5 games and their last 5 games. It's kind of given me a newfound belief, but we'll see how it goes. A huge result for Manchester United, and for Liverpool, I'm sure they'll go out and absolutely batter Spurs midweek now, and we'll just look absolutely ridiculous in everything we've just said. But let's leave that result there for now. Liverpool 2, Manchester United 2, and let's go down to, well, we're going to talk about this quickly, maybe, because it looks like it could be quite pertinent now, but Manchester City 4, West Ham United 1. No team loves to bend over for Man City more than West Ham. It seems like they get absolutely battered by them every single time they play. But Adam, it looks like finally Lopetegui might go. Why did they wait so bloody long?
No idea, but I think it's stubbornness from the board perspective, and probably David Sullivan, really. They wanted to prove a point. They wanted to change the kind of way that they were going about their kind of style of football. I don't think it necessarily has progressed from David Moyes. I think, if anything, it stayed pretty much the same. Apart from it's got probably the quality of football has got worse, and that's strange when you're kind of comparing it to David Moyes' style of football. But equally, Lopetegui, I think, has got a lot of fundamentals wrong. He's tried to force the issues a number of times. And I think there's some real kind of question marks to be said. I mean, the money that West Ham spend on players is up there with most clubs, unfortunately. It's just the type of transfers that they do in terms of their strategy is horrendous. When you think that they've also got a really aspiring academy, there's some really good talents there that are knocking on the door, but they can't get the game time, and inevitably they're having to go on loans, waiting and biding for their time. But I just get a sense that the whole kind of club is dismantled, and they're not kind of pulling in the right direction. There was kind of rumours of this under Moyes, where he clashed with the recruitment team there. I think there's still that element right now, and although they try to kind of get a bit more in sync with Lopetegui, I still think if you look at the signings of Full Creek, I don't think that is a Lopetegui signing. I still think that is a West Ham kind of narrative where they want a player that is what they perceive as a top quality striker and just force him upon Lopetegui. I don't think they're natural fit, and I think they've just all over the place in terms of their whole structure. But that's me summarising what West Ham fans have been kind of saying for a while, to be fair. I think there's probably far deeper issues. And, that's only like covering the surface of it. There's a lot more of issues going on at West Ham. And I do feel sorry for their fan base. I genuinely do feel, because they have the potential as a club. But they're just nowhere near it, unfortunately. And they will constantly go through this spiral of impacts, because eventually we will see the bigger players move on, unfortunately, and that's what's going to happen now going into sort of the summer period as well. So yeah, really would be worried if I'm a West Ham fan at this moment in time.
Yeah, well, it kind of sums up that I was talking to friend of the pod, Tom, and obviously Graham Potter was linked in the summer, and not David Gold, Sullivan was talking about how he doesn't really rate Graham Potter, doesn't really see him as, the kind of manager they're after, and now who's the favourite for the job and they're heavily linked with? Graham Potter, right? And he said it kind of just sums up where the club is. They haven't really got a fully laid out plan, and it doesn't seem to be heading anywhere. That Conference League win was such a big pedestal to build on. It's just not been built on at all, unfortunately. And the quality in that team, as you said, Kudus and Paquetá aren't going to be there much longer, I would imagine. Hopefully Kudus will come to the Emirates. I'm praying, but we can hope. A huge win for Man City, but I honestly think the second you score one against West Ham, they concede about 5 or 6, it feels, this season, especially against the big teams. Their record has been absolutely atrocious. So let's leave that game there. I don't really think there's much to say about Man City. No. And, well, let's talk about what was the next one we wanted to do. Tottenham 1, Newcastle United 2. God, this is good. Solanke in the 4th minute scoring before Gordon very quickly established equality with a goal in the 6th, and then Isak with a lovely finish in the 38th minute. Tottenham on an absolutely horrendous run. They've now lost 10 games this season. This is the 3rd season in a row they've lost 10 games, I think, which is a lovely little stat. But Andrea, Ange just can't really seem to turn this around at the minute. No wins in 4. And again, the second Newcastle scored, you kind of felt like, well, Spurs haven't got another one in them.
Yeah, I told you, double relegation. I think, I agree. I think it was that momentum. As soon as Newcastle equalised, they were the ones going to score second. They did, and then to be fair, I did think Tottenham played a little bit better than they've done in previous weeks. To be fair, I think they did, but it was just a similar pattern that they scored early, and then they switch off. They did it against Chelsea. They were 2-0 up, and then they switched off. They've done it quite a lot in recent games, and it just doesn't seem to be that Ange has really got the game management side of things. Like, it's all nice playing the nice football, but there's no kind of understanding of like the game plan, or kind of like in certain moments of games how to approach it. It's full throttle, and I think it's backfiring. And a lot of it, as you've said, I remember seeing your famous rant about the the board and stuff. And much as I agree with that, I also think he has a lot to blame as well. I really do. I think he really has to take accountability because in the press conferences, he just never does. He always talks about how, it's the right approach. This is how we're going to play. This is how it is. And I just think it gets to the point where you really have to seriously question his position as the manager, really. Again, in this game, to be fair, they really could have got something if they really, if they had a bit more different approach. They've had their injuries, but I still think they've got quality there to go on and, win these type of games. But to have 10 losses and we're only in January is horrific. For Tottenham Hotspurs, it's horrific. I know Tottenham Hotspurs don't win anything, but they don't lose 10 at least by January. Like, it's terrible.
It's been honestly, it's been a really bad season. I know that their defense has been torn to pieces. They've got their third choice goalkeeper in net. It's not ideal, right? I understand that there's difficult situations. I'm not saying they should be keeping clean sheets every week, but I'm saying just defend for 5 minutes after a goal. Just calm it down for a minute. It feels like every time Spurs score, they concede within 2 minutes, and the fans must just be like, for fuck's sake, can we not just calm down? Can we not just you've got one, let's wait 5 minutes before we push for another one, right? Because you are at your most vulnerable the seconds after you score, right? You have to just lock down a little bit, slow it down, and then start building again. And I was watching this on the train coming back from Puglia, and I just burst out laughing the second Newcastle scored. So I was like, right, how long was that? Right, it was 2 minutes. Well done, boys. How does it happen every single frigging time? It's genuinely impressive. But we do have to say, obviously, their defence is all over the place. Austin in goal, I think he did relatively well, to be honest, considering he was just thrown in. They have signed a new goalkeeper from Czech Republic, I want to say. So I'm sure we'll see him before long. But Newcastle, let's talk about Newcastle. Let's be positive. It looks like, Adam, Eddie Howe's got them turned around. They're in fantastic form. That midfield of Joelinton, Tonali and Guimaraes is a midfield that can match up against any in the league. It's just unbelievable when they're on song.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of impetus around their form really right now. He's managed to, I think, in Eddie Howe, suss out the positions for both Tonali and Guimaraes, because I have seen for a number of weeks where Newcastle fans have been kind of, I suppose, a bit disappointed by where those players have been playing, in particular in the midfield roles. And now we're getting to a point where Sandro Tonali is a bit more used to that kind of regista role. He's more in the centre, kind of taking the ball from that kind of centre back and defensive line and progressing the ball forward. And then you've got the likes of Joelinton and Guimaraes offering kind of a box-to-box approach, but with a lot of determination, a lot of pace, stamina, physicality as well from both. I think that's a formidable trio. And that's why Newcastle have been on the run that they have been. I think there's, I put in my notes, I think there's potential for them to now cement a fourth spot in the league. I truly think they've got the potential now. And if you think about Isak in the form that he's in, there's not many areas of that pitch that you kind of go and think, right, Newcastle need to really get some backups in those departments or maybe get a better player, because actually they are really strong when they're in attacking full flow. I think maybe there's question marks at the back, because you saw in the second half, whilst they controlled the game a bit more, there were hairy moments, I think it's fair to say. And I do question mark about maybe the fitness of Sven Botman, for example. That's probably a positive for Arsenal going into the semi-finals of the League Cup going forward as well, because they won't have Fabian Schär in that department either. He's suspended. So I think that they're the kind of obvious areas that maybe Newcastle need to improve on, and if they've got the ability, maybe look at who they can entice to sign till the end of the season. But for me, all the hallmarks of potentially getting into the Champions League once again, Rory, and potentially there'll be a stronger side for it.
Well, it's it, and it wasn't so long ago we were talking about taking it for granted that Newcastle, probably says how little we know, but taking it for granted that Newcastle weren't going to get any European football, right? So the turnaround has just been absolutely insane. And as you said, for their PSR and for where they want to take this team, it's absolutely paramount that they qualify for the Champions League. I think the only issue for Newcastle is the depth, right? If Isak gets injured, who replaces him, right? If Gordon gets injured, who's next in line? Like, I just think their bench isn't quite as strong, and that's where, when the games start piling up, maybe you'll see things kind of like, it'll be interesting to see what side they put out against Arsenal. It'll be interesting to see what bloody Arsenal side put out. We've got no attackers left, but like, even Ethan Nwaneri's out now, but like, it'll be interesting to see, because I think they really, really want to go for a cup, Newcastle. Like, it would be absolutely huge for them to win the Carabao. I think they're going to have to throw everything at it, and they're going to want to throw everything at it. But so it's going to have to give somewhere in the lack of depth that they have, I think. But yeah, unbelievable performances from them recently. Isak is just, I would do anything to have him at Arsenal this year. Honestly, I think if he's at Arsenal this year, we win the league like comfortably. It's insane how good that guy is. That's now 7 games in a row where he scored. I think 6 or 7 games something now in a row. So he's after Jamie Vardy's record. It'll be interesting to see if he gets there. But huge win for Newcastle. Things continue to be hilarious at Tottenham Hotspur. That's all good. And before we wrap up very quickly, Southampton 0, Brentford 5. Now, I was reading a really interesting article today in The Athletic about how Brentford have got, pound for pound, the most efficient attack in terms of how many goals they've got out of the money that they spent from Mbeumo and Wissa. Now, in this game, of course, Mbeumo got 2, including a penalty, and Wissa got 1. And of course, Kevin Schade getting 1 as well, who's quietly having a very good season for them as well. I wanted to give Brentford a little bit of love before we go 2-footed in on Southampton. This is obviously their second win away of the season, I want to say. Like, they have been atrocious away from home. I saw a great thing. The Brentford website put out a questionnaire to their fans saying, what would convince you to go to attend more away games? And the reply was just winning some. So this is absolutely massive for them to get this result. But Andrea, I wanted to get your take on Wissa and Mbeumo. They're both all getting the headlines now. Mbeumo, another player that is being relentlessly linked to Arsenal, understandably. Like, pound for pound, they've just been incredible signings for Brentford, right?
Definitely. I think Mbeumo the most, to be fair. I think this is good, but I think Mbeumo is very special. I think he's on for a big move for sure. Could be Arsenal, you don't know. I mean, he's really took that Brentford team, led it really well in these last 2-3 years now, let's say. And he's been a real, he's scoring goals. I think they've linked up really well as well. And they've carried the team in terms of the goals they've got. Without them in the team, I'd love to see how many goals and stuff they've had without those in the team. That's how pivotal they've been to Brentford. But they've just see if they can kind of keep them for next season. That's going to be the big ask, because they're going to be a hell of a players to replace. So they're both players that have actual Premier League experience on top of performing well as well. So it'll be interesting to see. But yes, they've been both unreal this season yet again.
And it's a tip of the hat, Adam, to the fact that we've all forgotten who even Tony is, right? We've kind of, we really worried about where they were going to be without his goals. And okay, they've had a little bit of a dip because their away form has been just so atrocious. But like, they're still exactly where they were with him, right? And that has got to be given full credit to the recruitment team there, and of course, Thomas Frank.
Yeah, 100%. I think there was a lot being alluded to, the fact of them not winning away from home. But they've got a formidable kind of presence at home games as well. They've got this fantastic record up until recently. So for me, Thomas Franks deserves a lot of credit, but so do the likes of Mbeumo and Wissa, because they've actually improved their levels in terms of their understanding, but their natural kind of clinical edge in front of goal. They had to take a lot of that pressure from the fact that Tony was obviously suspended for that length of time. And it felt like actually Brentford were much more natural in terms of their game when Tony wasn't involved. When he was introduced back into the team, it felt like there was a disbalance to that squad. So I think, if anything, that probably helped them persuade that kind of factor of, if we lose Tony, we're not going to actually lose out overall. I think the hard job for them is to actually keep hold of these players, because I think, I think potentially with a few more additions, we could be saying Thomas Franks gets this team to be a bit more consistent and be within the top 10. I'm not going to say they're going to be in the hunt for the European places. I think if they can start building on terms of being a much more formidable team that keeps a presence within the top 10, that would be a good start. And do you know what? Brentford can start dreaming then potentially, but they've got, like you say, such a fantastic model in terms of their transfer strategy, and this has been developed since their League One days. They've been known for doing this kind of strategy, plucking these players from like obscure places, but with the kind of stats that back it up. And I think even like you said, Kevin Schade another one that's proving his worth. It's taken him probably a little bit longer for him to get established within this squad. We're also waiting to see what happens to the likes of Gustavo Gomez, for example, who they bought in for 9 million from Gomero. So there is a potential with a lot of these players. Even Thiago Rodriguez, who got injured in the summer, he was supposed to be deemed as the Tony replacement, and a lot of hype around him. So again, when he comes back into fold, it will feel like a new player for Brentford. So let's see what happens. But certainly a lot of promising signs for Brentford's perspective.
No, absolutely. Kevin Schade with 5 goals and 2 assists in 10 starts, 20 appearances overall. But for your first season in the Premier League at 23 years old, it's a pretty good return. And I think, again, he's not getting talked about because of Wissa and Mbeumo, obviously. Mbeumo's season so far has just been absolutely fantastic. I think it's now 13 goals and 3 assists so far this season. Again, I'm desperate for Arsenal to sign any winger, so I'll take anyone. But Mbeumo, I really am also very, very excited about. But let's talk about what we all want to talk about, Southampton. Are they going to be the worst team in Premier League history? Now, by this point, I think Derby also had 6 points at this point in the season, but they did go on to collect another 5. Now, obviously, they only had 1 win that season, which was against Newcastle. That always makes you laugh. I'm not sure why. The question is, Adam, can we see them getting 6 more points this season? I think so. Just to let you, they've scored 12 goals and they've conceded 44 already. 1 win, 3 draws, and 16 losses. Do you think they're going to get another 6 points?
No, I can't see it. I mean, they're not on the levels of Hellas Verona in conceding goals, but I think they're catching up with them right now, it seems. I can't see with the team that they've got right now, and even if Ivan Juric can go and persuade a few of his maybe staple kind of style of players that he wants to bring, we know from his Torino days that there will be always a hot and cold kind of day with Torino. There was never a consistent run with them. So I still think even if they did manage to get one result, which could be a draw, for example, they'll follow it up with a defeat. That's the nature of how Ivan Juric is, a very hot and cold kind of character. They talk about the fact that Ivan Juric is a rock and roll kind of footballer in terms of style of philosophy. But, I'm not really seeing anything with the Southampton squad based on the recent performances. I just don't think they were well equipped for this Premiership jump, Premier League jump even. And I can't see where they go from here personally. I think they're better off try and build for the future and maybe bleeding in some younger players now at this stage because they've got nothing to lose now. And I do wonder whether they should just rebuild for the Championship.
Well, that has to be the project now, right, Andrea? I can't see it. I think they're going to go down as the worst Premier League team. I thought maybe last year Sheffield United were going to push Derby, but I kind of said they'll get over the line. This Southampton team are much worse than Sheffield United, and Sheffield United were horrendous last year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the only real talking points would be players like Dibbling stepping up, but you're asking a lot from such a young guy who's shown so much potential as well. I really like him. I think he's got a bright future ahead, but it's a lot to ask in that situation for him to step up and deliver. The only thing I was looking for, to be fair, was the Everton game when they were playing Everton, because I feel like Everton always lose to the worst teams in the Premier League every year. So, but they're playing them second last game of the season, so by then the game it's done. So I don't think that was the only hope of getting 3 points. So I don't see it. I think defensively, just they're so susceptible to goals at any moments. They can be in the lead. There's been times in games where they've had the lead and then they've lost it completely. I think the Liverpool one was one where they had the lead and then all of a sudden I think they scored 4 or 5 in the end. So it's very for the mood of it all. It's very down. Like it at any moment it just can go completely flat and they can concede 3 or 4 and the game's done. And I think that's something we've got to this point, they still haven't stopped, and that's a basic thing to stop. Be a bit solid, not concede those goals in quick succession, stuff like that. But yeah, it just seems they don't really have any experience as well in that team that have Premier League experience, who knows what it is to be in the Premier League and also in that kind of position as well. And we've got to be honest as well, there's a lot of players that are probably real good Championship quality players, but not necessarily Premier League quality as well. And I think if they were going to go into Championship, they've got a team to build around, a young players to build around. If hopefully they keep Dibbling, for example, and a few others. But yeah, I think precisely because of that, we're seeing teams above them who have great players in their team, and they're nowhere near that level of quality in their team, and that's the real concern for me. And of course, the only thing that you could help is a number 9, and they don't even have that position. Not even someone just at least 5 goals, 5-10 goals, Yeah. And that's the kind of killer blow for me, I'd say, in terms of if you've got anything to offer, at least someone, to score you some goals, and they don't even have that. So yeah, there's not even one positive, I'd say, apart from Dibbling. I'm a big fan of Dibbling. I've said it a few times, but again, it's not possible to have him to save you.
No, he caused us all sorts of problems at the Emirates, Dibbling. I really feel sorry for Ramsdale. It's going to be like his 4th fucking relegation on his CV.
Oh,
like,
yeah, it's confirmed then.
The drop, exactly. The drop off in his career has been absolutely insane. I feel sorry for the lad. And Onuachu, I love him every time I see him because the guy's an absolute giant. But I'm not quite sure what he does on a football pitch. He looks so hilarious every time I see him. But yeah, I think Southampton, honestly, to the fans that are still turning up, I just salute you because that is a bloody galling experience. Like, genuinely, that has got to be grim. And you see it quite a lot amongst Championship fans now. They talk about it like, don't go up, it's horrible. Just stay in the Championship. It's so much more fun. And I just feel like that is not going to be a fun time at St. Mary's for the rest of... There's still 18 games left. Like, you've got a long time to go. Like, it's a long old slog. 19 games left? No, 18 games left. Yeah, I think they will go down as the worst team in Premier League history. So there's a record for you, Saints fans. Lastly, before we do a look ahead to the Carabao Cup, the Energy Drinks Cup, very quickly, the other results. Nottingham Forest just beat Wolves 3-0 away to put themselves 4 points now, 3 points ahead of Chelsea. 4 points ahead of Chelsea in 4th place. Forest fully on that European charge. And Arsenal have no attacking players left. We're officially dead. That's it. Are you happy now? We drew 1-1 with Brighton as even Ethan Nwaneri went off injured. And another decision that you will only ever see be given against Arsenal was given against Arsenal. I saw the breakdown of the penalty today by Dermot Gallagher very quickly. I'm not going to sit on this long, I promise. He said the ball went to Saliba. Saliba didn't go to the ball. That's why it wasn't a penalty. If I see that quoted for the rest of this season now and as justified for giving a penalty, I will eat my hat. For some reason, these things only happen against us, and it's driving me fucking mental. I know we weren't good enough, but I still do not know how that wasn't a penalty. How that was a penalty. But anyway, we're going to take a very quick break, guys. I'm going to take a few deep breaths, and when we come back, we're going to come back to preview the Energy Drinks Cup. We'll see you on the other side. And we are back. It's time to talk about the Energy Cup as we have the semi-finals. Tonight, as you are listening, we have Arsenal taking on Newcastle. And on Wednesday, we have Tottenham hosting Liverpool. Now, Arsenal-Newcastle, I kind of briefly or very quickly talked about. It'll be interesting to see what teams are put out here. I'm not sure if Arteta is going to mould an attacker from clay, but we need to find someone who can go onto the pitch. Maybe Kieran Tierney as left winger. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what side we put out there. Tottenham hosting Liverpool. This is going to be an absolute classic. I think there's going to be goals all over this one. Every time these teams meet, there seems to be goals. So I think that could be a really fun one. I'm praying that we don't get a North London derby final. That's all I'm praying for at the moment. But that is the Energy Cup this week. Adam, take us through the Premier League fixtures.
Well, I'm going to caveat that by saying it is actually FA Cup weekends
It's
because
FA Cup,
we've
course
got
it is.
Premier League fixtures midweek next week. So I am going to try and do my best in terms of pulling out the Premier League sides that are playing. And so the first fixture starts on Thursday, the 9th of January, and the first fixture, 7:45. It is Everton at home to Peterborough. The big story here being Ashley Young potentially facing his son in the wing battle, which could be absolutely hilarious. So we are waiting in anticipation for that moment to take place. Otherwise, we've also got Fulham at home to Watford. Then on Friday, the 10th of January, we've got Aston Villa at home to West Ham at 8 p.m. We then move into Saturday's fixtures, even starting off with Bristol City at home to Wolverhampton Wanderers. That's a 12 p.m. kickoff, should I say. Then we've got Liverpool at home to Accrington Stanley at 12:15 p.m. Followed by we've got Leicester City at home to QPR at 2 p.m. At 3 p.m. we've got AFC Bournemouth versus West Bromwich Albion, Brentford at home to Plymouth Argyle, Chelsea at home to Morecambe, and then Nottingham Forest at home to Luton Town, and then followed by Man City at home to Salford City. That's a 5:45 p.m. kickoff time. Then finally, we will move into the later games that take place on Sunday. So Tamworth face at home Tottenham Hotspur before we also see at 3 p.m. Arsenal at home to Man United. Then we've got Crystal Palace at home to Stockport. That's a 3 p.m. kickoff time. Ipswich Town at home to Bristol Rovers, again at 3 p.m. Newcastle United at home to Bromley. That's at 3 p.m. And then Southampton at home to Swansea at 4:30 p.m. And that is your FA Cup fixtures for this weekend, Rory.
Beautiful. Where do we see the upset, guys? I'm penciling in Peterborough Everton for my upset. Where do we see the upsets?
I'm going to put my kind of thoughts towards maybe Crystal Palace losing at home to Stockport. I fancy that one.
Stockport having a very good season. That's a very good shout. Yeah, Andrea, any upsets in the offing? Are Chelsea going to lose to Morecambe?
No. I think, to be fair, it's not really upset to say Swansea, Southampton, but I think it's not really an upset, is it? To be honest, it's a championship game. I'll go with Fulham, Watford, London. You never know.
Yeah,
been an interesting one. Watford have been in the dark the recent years, to be fair. So why not?
I will absolutely take that. Nice, guys. There's not much transfer action in the Premier League at the moment. Spurs have signed that goalkeeper, and that's about it. But we will try and keep an eye on whatever happens when the Premier League clubs and whenever Arsenal decide to sign a striker or an attacker. I will stop going on about it, I promise. But Adam, anything to say to the listener before I send them home?
Just if you happen to be a Apple variant listener, so if you happen to listen to Apple Podcasts, do us a favor and give us a balanced review. That's all we ask. We've only got 3 ratings on there and 1 review. That doesn't really reflect what we do on this podcast, so we appreciate it, especially for Andrea's benefit, who joins us for this area edition. So please, what you can do, just go on there, write a review. It doesn't have to be positive, but just give us a bit more balance. That'd be really appreciated. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, as always, guys. On all social media, we are at Anglo-Italian Pod, apart from X, where we're at Italian Anglo Pod. If you're on YouTube, hit like and subscribe button down here somewhere. If you're on your podcast, as Adam said, give us a like, a follow, subscribe, rating, all those things. We will love you forever. Guys, go and check out the Serie A episode. There was a great Rome derby for you to check out there, as well as a huge comeback in the Super Coppa that we went through as well. So go and check that one out now. It will be on your feed. And we'll see you next time, guys. We'll see you later.
Take care.
See ya.